Well, hello and welcome to my channel and welcome to the Slim Nations One-on-Ones podcast. I'm Slim Overton, of course, and I have a special guest here with me this morning, and her name is Toy Hunter.
Uh,
And Toy, I always, for some reason, I always want to say Tori, but but that's not the way it is. It's just a mind thing. I see the Toi, and there's no R in there. I still want to say Tori. But anyways,
that's
Toy. And Toy Hunter is here, and she is Vice President of Business Retention and Expansion with the Hampton Roads Alliance. And Toy is originally from Lynchburg, Virginia, and she got to Portsmouth, as they say, as soon as she could. But she had some experiences getting here, and we'll talk about that before we go into the alliance, her role with the alliance. But well, first of all, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. It's Friday and looking forward to the weekend, and it's been a good week. So, the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day, so it's a good day.
How about it? It's a great day. And I first met Toy when, well, I'm still serving on the Board of Equalization that in the city of Portsmouth. And what we do is see appeals, people who want to appeal their real estate tax assessments. And I met her. She came on as an alternate, but she was like a regular member, and we really valued her expertise in the area of real estate, of her being, and I'll let her tell about her experiences with as a loan person. But that's when I met her, and she was a young single lady, just navigating her way through the business world. And I think she was working for the city of Portsmouth at that time. But fast forward to now, she's married and a mother of two, and juggling all those things, which she's doing all of it well. But anyway, Joy, talk about your experience. How you got here. You grew up in Lynchburg. Uh, you went to school there and ended up going. Well, I'm telling it. I'll let you tell it.
Okay, sure. Well, thank
Yeah.
you. First, thank you for giving me the chance to be on your show. I'm
Thank
grateful
you
and
for
honored to be here. And I'm from Lynchburg, Virginia. I'm actually from Campbell County, a little area called Concord, which is in Campbell County. So it's a more rural location. It's not like Hampton Roads. It's a slower pace of life there, but my parents are from there. My grandparents are from there. And so that's my hometown. And I went to high school there to Russburg High School in Campbell County. And then when I graduated from high school, I was eager to move on to new places and experience new things. And I applied to Virginia Tech and majored in finance. And back then, it was very affordable to go to Virginia Tech as a larger
you.
public school in the state. And so my parents could afford it. And so that's where I went. And I really loved my experience there. I remember sitting in a student center one day, and there's students from all over the world at Virginia Tech and most larger campuses like that. And I just said to myself, wow, I can't believe that I'm here, this girl from Campbell County, Virginia, and here I am with all these people from all over the world. And so I was always very grateful for that experience. And so that's sort of where I started.
And coming from the county like that, and I think you had mentioned when we talked before, you all used to come down to the Hampton Roads area and visit Virginia Beach and everything. Like a lot of people in Virginia, especially from the counties,
Mhm.
this was the place to come, or either go up to the DC area. So when you used to come down here as a developing young lady, did you did that start your interest in development and things like that? Coming here and seeing it wasn't New York, but
Right.
the buildings were a little larger than probably you experienced in the county.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
that sort
Well,
of spark your interest in development and things like that?
not so much for development, but just to live here because when I was younger, my parents, we went on vacation once a year, and my sister and I could choose between Kings Dominion or Busch Gardens, and then we would go to the Virginia Beach oceanfront. And so it was just something special about getting in the car and coming down 64 East. We just knew it was going to be a good time. Once a year,
Yes.
we got to do that. And my sister and I, we joke around that we know all the lyrics off of every one of Luther Vandross's albums because we would listen to it the whole time from Lynchburg to the beach because my parents would play that music. And my parents are into jazz music, so they would go to the Hampton Jazz Festival. So we would
Like,
go to that too. And so when I would experience that, it seemed like everything in Hampton Roads was just exciting and interesting. And even now my husband and I were deciding where we were going to go for spring break, and we said maybe we should go somewhere with an aquarium. I said, well, we got one in Virginia Beach, and we said, well, maybe we should go somewhere with the zoo. And I said, we have one in Norfolk, and so we have everything here in Hampton Roads, and I just love it here. I never take it for granted. So that's when I started being interested in living here. I got interested in development, actually back home in my youth. I was always really interested in our shopping mall. We had a shopping mall, it's still there, called River Ridge Mall. And I came up through a time where the shopping mall was the place to be. It was a place to shop, but it was also where you would see people you didn't see very often. And it was
mhm.
always buzzing. And I've got great memories in, Christmas time at the mall. And I would think about who manages the mall and how do the stores get here. So that's where I kind of started, just being very curious about how do these stores get here and who operates this whole thing. So that's why when I went to Virginia Tech, I majored in finance and was interested in commercial real estate for a while. And then I went through finance as a major and did well and left college with a finance degree and went on to work for BB&T, which is now a different bank. And I didn't love finance the way I thought I would. It's to me, it requires a very outgoing personality, more of an extrovert. I'm probably more of an introvert. I like one-on-one conversations, but with a
Mhm.
bigger group, to me, it feels exhausting to have to network with a larger group. So in 2007, 2008, I was working at the bank in mortgage lending. And as you know, the whole world came to an end in the mortgage business at that time. And my first loans that I did out of college were called NINA. It stood for no income, no asset. So the very large loans we were doing, and we weren't even checking the income or assets of the borrower, but that was the nature of the work at that time. So about a year after that, all these loans defaulted, these big
Yes.
loans we're doing. And because they really didn't have the underwriting that was necessary for them to be a successful or sustainable loan. So when that happened, a lot of the banks took what was called TARP funds, Troubled Asset Recovery Program funds from the federal government. And BB&T was one of those banks, as several banks did that. And so we learned how to modify loans using these federal dollars. And that got me interested in, well, who wrote this legislation? How does it get from Washington, D.C. to the person that's actually doing the loans? So I was just curious about it. And that's when I decided maybe I should go into government because that really interested me more so than finance did. And so I left the bank and went to back to Virginia Tech to do a master's program in public administration and studied a lot of federal laws and policies and that type of thing. And I had a wonderful professor that
And,
was
and Toy,
yes,
before you get into the next level, I want to go back to the part you mentioned about being a loan officer or in the
sure,
loan business. And I remember that time too because I was a realtor, and I just wanted to know personally when you all were doing that because I had people that went through that, and I said, "Wow, how did they get through?" But I was happy, as the realtor that they did get through. Did you all? Did you kind of foresee? You said, "Wow, we're doing these loans, without assets or the proper documentation they needed." And did you foresee that these things could backfire on us? Did you kind of see that personally? Because I was just curious about that because a lot of you all were being directed by what the banks were telling you all to do, and I think it was part of a plan to sort of uh, help the economy, help the housing stock,
right,
raise, and they were hoping that people would sustain that, but those people from the beginning probably were doomed, were destined to fail because, usually, you take all these things into play when you're approving a loan. And I'm
Right.
saying all that to say, how did you, because how did you feel as a loan person? Did you kind of see that might happen, but hoped it didn't?
Well, so at that time, I was fresh out of college, so I had no real world experience.
Okay, okay,
And of course, I had never had a mortgage at that point. I was paying rent at an apartment. And so I just didn't have the real world grown up experience to really understand the magnitude of that moment. I really didn't understand that I was a part of that era and time until I went to grad school and there were some students writing their papers on too big to fail. And I was like, wow, I was
mm,
sort of a part of that movement. But it was unusual to do a loan without checking someone's income. It felt wrong to do that, but at that time, all the banks were doing it and selling them on the mortgage on the secondary market, and they were being
right.
bought. What was unusual was once the bank sort of made a turn, most banks took a turn and started to recover them. um, there was so many to work on that we would work on them from even outside our region. So I would get some loans to modify and restructure from Northern Virginia that really had that bubble burst. And then I would see that people that were in a home that they had paid $1 million for was then worth 500,000. And that's the moment that was sort of like, you really feel for these people. There were some people though that lost a second home or vacation home, and so you're dealing with some people that are losing where their kids get off the bus, and then you're dealing with some people that are losing their vacation home. So it's sort of like you really want to help this person out because they're having a real personal issue that's going to impact their life. So it was just a real moment in time for me to be like, wow, these things are happening at a global national scale, but it's hurting people like that are your neighbors. So that was a real eye-opening moment for me back then.
Yeah, yeah, I just asked that before you went on because even those experiences down the road will help you. Probably help you in some of the other areas you went into. It's always a learning experience. But I was just curious, and you explained it well. You were young, but you did see some problems with that. With hoping that would help the housing stock, but it kind of backfired. But anyway, go ahead, continue on. Then you went back and got your master's and sort of
Yeah.
changed your direction as far as development goes.
Right. So I thought I would go on to work for the Housing and Urban Development or either the FDIC because I'd had some experience with those federal agencies working at the bank. But I visited DC and I just didn't like it. It didn't feel the way I thought it would feel. The buildings up there were so big and dark and it just seemed so bureaucratic. And I had a wonderful professor in grad school. His name is Bob Stripling, and he had been the town manager in Blacksburg. He had been the city manager in Stanton, and he was running a program called the Local Government Management Certificate Program along with the master's degree.
Hmm.
And he said, I should think about local government. I should think about economic development. He thought I would be a great candidate for that certificate program. So I did it. He helped me get an internship with the city of Roanoke. He helped me to connect with, at that time, the city manager in the city of Portsmouth, who was Ken Chandler, who offered me an opportunity to do a 6-month graduate fellowship program in the city. And so that's how I got to the city of Portsmouth and how I got into economic development.
Yeah, and that's great. And for people that don't know, I served on the EDA at one point. And I think it was before you got there. I did 8 years, but I think by the time you came, I had sort of served my time there. But what I knew serving those 8 years, what was important was business retention, and
Hmm.
it's what you are vice president of now, and what you really involved with now, and how important that is. Even though new businesses come and some go, it's so important because you might get a dip in new businesses coming in, and this is throughout Hampton Roads, and making sure those people, the ones that are here, are happy, or if their needs are met, or not left out there to dry. Because sometimes if you could get them, they might have some problems that could be helped by grants or just by consultation.
Right.
So So as you went along, City of Portsmouth, that got you into development. So where did you go from there? How did you rise to the state level? I guess you always have aspirations of going higher and higher. So, but Portsmouth was like a stepping stone for you to continue in that field and excel.
Well, yeah, Portsmouth was definitely the foundation because I learned everything about economic development in Portsmouth, really. And I worked for a director at that time. His name was Patrick Small, and he was a
Hmm.
great mentor and leader and supervisor for me. And another colleague at that time, her name is Mallory Butler, and it was Kaylor then, Mallory Kaylor Butler. And she was a wonderful coworker as well and taught me a lot of things. So a lot of the foundational knowledge that I learned was in Portsmouth. And I would say to anyone, if they're considering economic development, working at the local level, you really see the impact of your work when you're helping small businesses and even the larger ones as well. And you really gain an understanding of how important the business community is to community to contributing to the tax base of your city. And so that's what I learned there and took that with me when I applied for the job at VEDP, which is at the state level. And I really didn't think I would get that job at the time because I hadn't worked any state incentives. So at the interview, they asked me, give us an example of your experience with working with state level programs, but I didn't have any experience. And I explained that on my interview that I didn't have any experience, but I understood the programs and I knew how to apply them, and that I was good at sort of diagnosing problems. So talking with a company, my trick is listen 80%, talk 20%, and be an active listener and try to figure out what they're going through and then bring solutions to that. And so I guess that was good enough to get the job. And I did get the job at VEDP in Richmond. And I was there for about 4 years. And my job there was specifically managing an incentive program called the Virginia Jobs Investment Program. It's called VJIP for short. It's one of the oldest incentive programs here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it's an easy sell to companies if they're considering relocating or expanding in Virginia. It's an incentive that pays for training and development of their workforce. So companies love that. And so it was a great job because I was bringing good news and resources to companies and they appreciated that. So that was a great experience for me. But I took the things that I learned in Portsmouth with me to that position. And I think that's what made me a good candidate and a good employee in that role.
Yeah, and when you talk about selling Virginia, and let's bring it to Hampton Roads there, when you do that, do you sell Hampton Roads in general? Because when you put it all together and put all the numbers together as far as population and the military and things like that, it makes for a pretty good sale, especially when you have all the different cities and each city has their own niche.
Right.
So is it best to, because my thing is regional cooperation, and and that comes with the city council, the elected officials, and what I've seen when I was involved, it was great regional cooperation, and it's probably still going on now. I just don't see it from through my eyes as heavy as it used to be, and I think it's important um, for all the cities to benefit from it. So, I mean, is the best to sell, excuse me, the region of Hampton Roads to a company, even though they might land in Virginia Beach or Hampton and things like that? And when they do, how do the other cities benefit when you bring in a big company like that? Or,
Sure.
go ahead.
Yes, I'll give you some examples, but to answer your question, um, yes, we do sell the region because a lot of companies they don't see the jurisdictional lines if they're looking to locate or expand in our region because their workforce is usually from 2 or 3 different zip codes, and so they're pulling from all over the region. There are employers here that have folks coming up from Northeast North Carolina, so we
Right.
consider that part of our region as well. And so when we talk about the region, we're talking about the airport, which is in Norfolk. We're talking about the ocean front, obviously, which is in Virginia Beach. We're talking about our port facilities. We have the city of Portsmouth there, which is really leading the
Mhm.
way in offshore wind. And so every city has something to offer the greater business community. So we want to sell all of those pieces. We talk about all of them and the strengths of the region. And so we usually are able to get a company interested in our region, and then they pick the piece of real estate that works best for them, regardless of, what city that it's in. But I'll give you an example of some regional support on one of the largest project in Virginia was announced recently called LS Cable, LS Greenlink, and they build cables for offshore wind. And there was a lot of collaboration between Norfolk and Chesapeake and Portsmouth and support at that event and for that company being here, because all of the cities know that when a project like that comes here, that company's suppliers and vendors, they'll be looking to come closer as well. And so they may come to Chesapeake, they may go to Newport News. So when one big company comes here, it encourages a cluster for that industry to come to our region as well. So we're all rooting for each other here in Hampton Roads.
Yeah, and I often wonder how, when you're advocating for the whole area, how, when you have those periods like we had here in the city of Portsmouth for a while when we were making national news, not in the best ways, does that come up with, from some of the companies? They say, well, how about those problems you're having, the city council is having, or, how about the crime? Do those things come up? And when they do, how do you overcome that?
Well, usually, no, some of those more local issues don't come up with the prospects that we're working with, but we're always ready to sort of overcome those objections. That's our job as salespeople, is to overcome objections. So we're prepared to deal with those things. So, for example, if a company is concerned about crime statistics or local governments and disagreements that may be going on, we give them historical perspective on the successful companies in our region. So that's why business retention is so important, because when companies come to our region, they want to talk to their sort of business colleagues. They want to talk peer to peer. And so they're asking existing businesses, how have you operated here for so long? Tell us what's really going on. And those companies that are happy here, and we've worked with them and brought them resources over the last 5, 10, 15 years, they tell that story for us. And so we don't have to sort of mitigate all of those objections that company may have. But as a specific example, if we're working with a company and they're concerned about safety, we'll bring in law enforcement to have a
Mhm.
conversation about that. And so everything's on the table. It's very transparent. And but usually some of the issues that we think are magnified are really magnified at the local level, and larger prospects aren't. They're more concerned with taxes and workforce and training and development and those type of things.
Yeah, I asked that because a lot of people, you hear conversation when things go on, that they're concerned about how we look nationally. And most companies look at the bigger picture, because anywhere they go, you're going to have those problems with politics and crime. So they look at the big pictures. And that's why I'm glad you said that. Talk to the companies that are here, that have been here, like Newport News or
Mhm.
shipbuilding or something like that. And if they've been here a long time, they're not going to say, "Hey, this is the worst place to come." I don't want, not unless they're in direct competition, they might.
Right.
But but yeah, I just wanted to comfort the people that worry about that. That most companies look at a larger picture than what's going on locally, and what might be magnified every once in a while, and be on certain national shows that they don't even see. So,
Right. Mhm.
but we
Right.
see it and think it's affecting us. Yeah. So as you moved along, how, as far as the retention, I guess you have to. Do you have to deal, since we're talking politics? Do you have to deal with the elected officials more in that position, or do you just mostly deal with the companies? Because when you start talking regionalism, it's up to the local elected officials to really push that, or be involved, or make sure they're at those regional meetings that you have, and everything that you do with the alliance. I'm sure you invite them from
Mhm.
all the cities to come and be involved to get their input. So how
Right.
is that? Go ahead.
It works out really well. We've got great relationships with all of the local elected officials, and they're all very engaged in economic development. And about 2 or 3 years ago, the Alliance and the Workforce Council arranged a trip to Germany to look at workforce development with the apprenticeship programs that are in Europe and throughout Germany. And 5 mayors from Hampton Roads attended that trip. So just give you an example of the collaboration that's happening regionally. Economic development is usually something that most folks can come together on and agree that economic development creates jobs and creates opportunities to contribute more revenues to your local tax base. And so we've got great relationships with our local officials, and I think they all do a great job at promoting economic development. However, the Alliance is a little bit unique because we are not a government entity. And
Okay.
so so whereas at the local level you do have a council, and at the state you do have a general assembly and a governor. And so we sort of operate a little bit in between. And so we consider ourselves to be a convener of all of those elected officials and appointees and business leaders to come together and have conversations and work towards some shared goals. And so that's sort of how our relationship works with our elected officials here in the region.
Oh, okay. So, everybody working together in unison. There was a report some time ago. I want to know if it's still the same, that the average wage, as far as the Hampton Roads regionally, is lower than the national wage. And is that still the case? And if that's the case, how do you deal with that? I know you deal with mostly retention, but you also deal with expansion. And so I'm assuming expanding business opportunities. So how do
Right.
you deal with, if that comes up, well, I want to do my company here, but my employees, they're used to making so and so, and the national average shows that y'all are lower, as
Hmm.
far as wage earners than what my people might be used to, because some companies come and they bring, you know, their whole operation or a part of the operation.
Sure. So, great question. So, as I said, we're in the sales and marketing business, really. We're selling Hampton Roads as a business location to companies and existing companies to expand as well. So, having a lower wage than some of our competitive regions is actually a selling point for us here in Hampton Roads, because what we tell companies is you should expand here in our region because the cost of employment is less and the cost of
Mm.
living is less, so that your employees will have a higher quality of life if they move here than moving someplace else that might have um, a higher cost of goods. So, for example, if we're competing against the DC, Maryland area, a lot of people would choose Hampton Roads because the traffic is better here, the cost of goods are less here, the cost to live is less here. So, we're selling those things. So, even though the wages might be a little bit lower, we have a lot of amenities and better quality of life than some of our competitive regions. So that's the argument that we're making for the companies that we're working with. But another part of that is it's all data based. Economic development used to be more of come here and you'll see, let us show you around, and a company would sort of make a decision on just taking a look around and seeing, is this a good location for them? But that has changed in the last 10, 15 years, and everything is data based. So when we're working with a company and they're either considering coming to Hampton Roads or they're considering expanding, they've done their homework already, and they've done their research on competitive wages and the different tax structures between either here and where they're considering going. So they know all of those things. So we're coming back with the data points too, and we work it down to the granular level. So, for example, if a company says, we want to expand and add 3 new welders and 2 new pipe fitters, I'm pulling those very specific wages from the Department of Labor and comparing them between another region and this region. And I'm also sharing with them, if you come here, here's the wages that you would pay your employee. And also, our community college has a training program at this rate to help your employees go from this skill level to the next skill level. So we're addressing their concerns with data-based information.
Well, that's good information. Thanks for that. So as far as the retention, what do you actually get out there, or do you have a staff? Do you actually get out there and visit these companies and have tea with them or coffee or whatever, and just sit down and listen to whatever complaints or good stories they might have or what they might need, their needs. How does that happen? Is it an ongoing thing? Does it start at the top? Yeah, explain how that happens. Because so many
Sure.
companies, it's a wide area you have to cover.
Right. Well, so being a regional person, I'm focused on the companies that are sort of our major regional employers. And so I'm looking at the key employers in the region, the number of employees. And so that sort of sets my priority list from a regional perspective. But each locality has business retention and expansion, and they're meeting
Yes,
with the companies in their communities. And my role, the way I see it, for them is to add tools to their toolkit so they can be a strong, we call it BRE, Business Retention and Expansion Manager. So, for example, I'm making sure that I'm pulling regional data for my counterpart in the localities so they can go into a meeting with the business intelligence tools they need to help their company. So, for example, um, say there is a business in Portsmouth that wants to expand and they're not sure how to do that. Well, of course, Portsmouth has their toolkit of resources there in the city, but there may be some regional programs that they're not aware of that I can help them with. So, for example, I would go in and share that here at the region, we do relationship building between companies throughout the region. So, for example, if there's an existing company, say it's in Portsmouth, but they would like to meet with a company in Newport News, for example, we would help Portsmouth make those connections for their existing business in Portsmouth. Or, for example, if the company was looking to find out, well, what is the average wage throughout the region for a welder today? We can pull that data because we're pulling regional workforce development data. And so we're doing that on behalf of our counterparts in the localities. We also have events for our investors. We're an investor organization at the Alliance. Like I said, we're not government, we're a public private organization. So there are private sector companies that are members, or we call them investors of the Alliance. So we have events for those members and prospective members. And so, for example, if there's a company in Portsmouth that says, I'm thinking about expanding, well, Portsmouth could say to that company, well, we'd love to invite you as our guest to one of the Alliance's events so that you can do some C-suite level networking with some of the other business leaders in the region. So we see ourselves as we're not putting all the bricks together in business retention, but we're going to be the spackle to hold it together. We're filling in the holes where we can as a support system for our local partners.
yeah, that's great. And all the cities need that support system. I want to give a shout out to Doug Smith, and there have been some great presidents of the alliance in the past, but because I know Doug Smith, I just want to give him a shout out. What a great opportunity to have him as president. It's born and raised in Portsmouth. That's a plus right there in my
Mhm.
eyes. And of course, he was the economic development director some of the time I was on the EDA. And I remember another time I was on the planning commission, and that's when I first saw Doug. I think he was coming right out of college. I think he went to UVA. I'm not sure. And he was coming right out of college. And I said, what a bright young man with some very inventive ideas. And I saw then, he was going to go a long way. And then also he has the experience of being an elected official. So
Right.
you combine all those things, and what a plus you have for the alliance and their purpose in
Yeah.
the Hampton Roads areas. I just wanted to shout him out and say hello to him.
Well, he's been a great leader here at the Alliance. And when I left the state at VDP and came to the Alliance, one of the things that Doug said to me was, Toy, if you have ideas, this is a place where you can have ideas and carry them out. And so that's what really made me leave VDP and come to work for him here. So I have really appreciated him and what he's done for me in my career and the opportunity and the platform he's given all of us here at the Alliance. So he's been a great leader.
And I'm, excuse me, I'm frog in my throat, but I know that you're all organization like you are, and I remember seeing on when you started out as an intern, when you started your business career, do you all create opportunities or have opportunities for interns to come in and be a part of the alliance as they grow their careers?
Yeah, we do. And so we have a business intelligence division here at the Alliance that focuses on using those tools that I mentioned that pulls labor market data and does forecasting. So that division will have two interns this summer. And then I'm on the business development team. I do business retention and my colleagues do business attraction. So our business development team is going to have an intern this summer. We are working with a regional organization called the Hampton Roads Association for Commercial Real Estate, or HR
Mhm.
Acre for short, and they run an internship program where the student can apply to HR Acre, and then a company can go in and choose from that list of applicants from a student that's interested in commercial real estate. And so we've worked with them this summer to have an intern. And so the Alliance is all about filling the pipeline of talent and figuring out how we can help students to learn about economic development and start a career here. But as long as I've worked here, this organization has had interns and has worked with Christopher Newport, Old Dominion, Norfolk State. So yes, we do have interns, and it's a great asset to us. I know it's something that they can benefit from by getting some real world experience and networking in this industry. And a lot of people don't know this industry exists. There are a lot of young people that don't even know what economic development is, and so it allows them to sort of see what we do here and learn about it and see if it's something that they're interested in. And it's very helpful to us because, of course, young people come in with big ideas and they don't have a way of doing things yet. You know, they're open minded and open hearted, and that's good for us to see that and work with them. So we do have internships here, and we're excited about having them this summer.
And that's great because they can come in and give them an opportunity to see how many different directions they can go in as far as economic development is concerned.
Hmm.
And and I think about what you said when you were selling yourself. I don't have the experience here, but I'm a hard worker, and I have some fresh ideas that I can offer, which is always a good way to sell yourself. So the interns coming in, yeah, and sometimes they come in and they say something or make a suggestion. You know what? I've been here 25 years, but I never thought of it coming from that angle. So that's a great opportunity, like you said, for you and those interns coming in, getting that experience, working with the alliance.
Right. Hmm.
So let's talk about a little bit about you and your experience and you navigating through through what you're doing and the same thing many people have to do, navigate, through their personal life, their home life, and their job. And, you really have to have a passion for that job, because the home life is going to be there. That's going to be something that your passion is going to be there. But how are you navigating through all of that, and especially having young children coming up? I know this is more on the personal level, but a lot of people go through that, and it's a big part of what you do,
Sure.
navigating with your family, and they are part of everything you do as well, and along with your husband. He's in banking.
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking that question because, sometimes you feel like you have to sort of separate yourself between work and home, but I'm the same person, I'm one person. And, um, I do bring all of that with me to work, and I take my work home with me and everything. And I will say, before I had my children, I probably was more ambitious as far as in the career, trying to get to the next level, working late nights and weekends and that type of thing. And it was no problem. But life switches around on you sometimes. And now that I have my two children, I have my daughter, she's 5, and my son is 2. And so I tell everyone I'm sort of in the trenches right now because it's very physical as far, you're lifting, you're carrying, and you're holding. And
Yeah,
so that's where we are right now. And so it can be exhausting. But before, whereas I really wanted to have a career for myself, now I do really think about my children and what they will say when they're my age, when they're 40, and they'll say, well, my mom was, helping businesses in Hampton Roads grow. And they'll point to a business and says, and they'll say, my mom worked on that project. And that makes me proud to do the work that I'm doing and hopefully leaving a legacy for them. So I'm still ambitious in my career, but the purpose has changed. So when I
yeah,
leave for work, work and come in, and I, because of course I don't want to leave my children, ever, you want to be with them all the time. But when I leave for work, I just know that I'm doing something they can be proud of, their mom for doing. And then I have to give a shout out to my mother-in-law, who Valerie Hunter, and she's
My
been a
schoolmate.
wonderful. Yes, she's been wonderful to me, and I'm so grateful for my husband and his family. And she's always stepping in to watch the kids. So if my husband and I, we have after hours event. I had an after hours event last night. I'm on the board for 757 CoLab, which is an entrepreneurship program here in the region. And we had a dinner last night to invite the new cohort of companies. And she was willing to do overtime, and watch the kids. And so really from a personal perspective, having her and having family here, has helped me to have a career and lean into my career, because I haven't had to really worry about that, in my personal life. So it's a lot to juggle, but because of my in-laws, especially Valerie Hunter, I've been able to lean into my career.
Yeah, I think people should know that, about a person that's in business, because, like you said, once you have your children, you have kind of a different perspective on your job and what you do, and in many cases, you're even more driven, even though you said you were driven as a single person, but your direction is a little bit more focused in another area. So you can do it all, and that's what grandparents are for. I'm a
Yeah.
grandparent, and that's what we're for. To fill those gaps. As you achieve your goals,
Mhm.
everything like that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I just like to bring that up. I don't know if many people want to talk about that, but it's a part of what you do. It's a part of your life, and
Yeah.
I just think people need to know that. Yeah. So thanks for sharing.
Well, I'm happy to do it because I mean that is who I am, and I don't, like I said, I don't separate who I am between career and personal life, because I'm, a whole person. And so I think that my colleagues here, they sort of know that when I'm rushing out of here right at the end of the day, I'm going right to my kids, and they have that grace with me. And then they have different things in different chapters of their life. We all do. And so, we have grace with each other to sort of pick up the pieces. If, another coworker or colleague has something else going on in their life, yeah, we're going to be there for each other, because we are a team and we're working towards a goal together. And that's just life. Human beings have different chapters and different things they experience. And so I'm fortunate to have a career and an organization that supports me and who I am in my wholeness, as a working mom with a career. And, and I support my coworkers where I need to support them as well. And so it works out great.
Yes, yes, and shout out to Brad. Now I want to get into, as we're kind of winding down, but we have a little bit more time. Usually about an hour if you still have time. As you talk about retention and expansion is also a part of you. What about the future of Hampton Roads as you see it down the road? A lot of great things are happening in the pike. So how do you see the future of Hampton Roads as far as business development wise?
Sure. Well, our leadership here at the Alliance is leaning into Hampton Roads as a military metro area, focused on defense as the key industry, and then the sub industries under defense. So think about uncrewed systems like underwater unmanned submarines or drones that are being used both in the military and on the commercial side. We're leaning into the technology surrounding that. We're leaning into the technologies around shipbuilding and submarine manufacturing, and also with cybersecurity, which is a part of defense as well. And there is an unprecedented amount of money that's going to be coming out of the federal government for defense and for shipbuilding. We see that as our moment in Hampton Roads to lean in. The leadership here will mention that this is sort of our World War II moment for Hampton Roads, where we're going to support the United States in,
Mhm.
in protecting our country from many different vantage points. One being as a part of a trilateral security agreement called AUKUS. It's Australia, the UK, and the United States. And our largest private sector employer, which is Huntington Ingalls Industries and Newport News, is leaning into that and building the submarines and the pieces of the submarines that are needed for this security agreement. And so we are watching all of this go on and leaning into it and making sure that our existing businesses have a piece of um, this pie that's happening right now here in our region. And so we're leaning into that, and we see the future of Hampton Roads really being in this defense industry and the subsections of the defense industry, as I mentioned before. So that's the future of Hampton Roads economic development as we see it.
Yeah, you sort of went into my next question because I know you all are not a political organization, but you have to be kind of aware of what's coming down from the national stage. And of course, as far as defense, I don't think we'll be hurt there because they're holding tight on the defense line as far as funding. But, as you go around and talk to companies about retention and expansion, some of those companies that might be affected by some of the decisions that are being made at the federal level, how I guess y'all are aware of it and try not to get into the political part of it, but also have to be prepared to help those companies that might be hurt by that, because you don't want those companies to go out of business because the grants have dried up, that 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 sustain their business. So how, I know you're all aware of that. So how do you deal with that? Not trying to get you into the political
Sure.
part of it, because that's a whole nother story.
Sure. Well,
Uh,
our goal here is to really support our companies with resources and information. And so
mhm,
we lean into that hard. And so we work with our law firms in the area. As I mentioned before, we're an investor organization. So several law
mhm,
firms and other professional services are members of the Alliance. And so we tap them to get their perspective, their professional perspective. So we had a meeting with a law firm earlier this week that gave us some historical perspective on federal laws and policies like tariffs and how they've been used in the past, and what type of tools companies have used in the past that are still accessible to use when tariffs are in play. A lot of those tools have been there, but companies haven't necessarily had to use them, but might be time to look at them again. So, for example, the Foreign Trade Zone program that's administered by the Port of Virginia. So, we're leaning into some of these existing programs to help companies navigate it. And we're also giving them information from professionals in the field that are watching what's going on every day. So, that's our role that we play, is providing the information and the resources. Also, I'll give some perspective. I'm also a member of the Virginia Economic Developers Association. I'm the secretary for that organization. I'm a longtime member and I'm now the secretary. And we had our um, conference back in the spring. We held it in Newport News, and we had some perspective from the research division at VEDP out of Richmond. And they gave a great overview, for one, saying, it's really too difficult to tell you what's going to happen because things are changing constantly. It's a very dynamic market for economic development right now as far as federal policy. But looking at historical policies in the 90s, there was a reduction in the federal workforce. However, there was an increase in private sector hiring from the tech boom back in the 90s. And so what they are forecasting is there could be a possible boom in the tech industry in artificial intelligence. And that might be something that we can really lean into in Hampton Roads as well. And so we're looking at those things and figuring out, how do we pivot and how do we make the most out of the opportunities that we have so that we can continue to bring wealth opportunities to the citizens of Hampton Roads. So we're on top of it, but we're really in the business of research and information and
mhm.
resources.
Yes, and that's important to the companies that are involved. Now, the membership process, as far as being a member of the alliance, as
Mhm.
far as companies, how is that? How is that? How does that work? I mean, do you all go after companies and ask them to join, or if a company wants to join your alliance, how do they do that? And
Sure.
what's the whole process there?
Yeah, so we have a division of investor relations that has a director. Her name is Elisa Hegranes, and she works with companies throughout the region to tell them about the alliance and our what the benefits are to be a member of the alliance. All of that
Mhm.
information is also on our website for the Hampton Roads
Website.
Alliance. Yes, and it's a tiered system, and so we have different levels of membership from bronze, silver, gold, and a premium membership status. And so, if a company is interested in being a member of the Alliance, I would tell them to go to our website first, take a look at what we do, and if that is of interest to you, to reach out to us. I will say that being an investor in the Alliance is really investing in the region. It's if you believe in a regional model of economic development, then this might be something that you might be interested in or looking into. And so, of course, I think that it's a great opportunity for any existing business here, but it's something, certainly it's a business decision, and businesses have several opportunities to be members of either trade organizations or business organizations. So they have to sort of make that decision on what's the best fit for them. But I would say start with their website and take a look at the data there and see if that's something that resonates with you as a business.
Yeah, and the last thing, and companies, you have big companies and small companies, and they have to really take advantage of the opportunity to share services. Some companies have to do that in order to survive. So I believe that's a big part of what you all try to do with the companies. Make sure if it's times when they can share services, a larger company with a smaller company, we like to encourage that, to keep. So we need all the business to stay afloat in order for the whole region to be successful.
Yeah, and if there's any existing company out there, whether they're a member of the Alliance, if they're a small company, if they're a large company, they can certainly call me. My information is on the website for the Alliance. They can certainly give me a call, shoot me an email. We can talk about what is it that they're looking for. Like I said, I like to think of myself as diagnosing a problem. So I like to hear what the company is experiencing. I love learning about what the companies are doing so that I can say, well, I know a company in a different city that's doing this and you're doing that. So maybe you guys should meet, and maybe that connection is the help that they need. And so we serve that role as well. And usually what I will do is I'll ask a company, well, where are you located, and have you talked to your local economic development office yet? Because we work in tandem, and so we're a team. And so it's very transparent. So if I found out there's a company that might be in Portsmouth and they haven't called the local economic development department yet, I'll make that call and do that email, and and we can get together and talk about their company over a virtual meeting and say, what are you doing and what are the next steps for you? So we're here to help all the companies here. So there are no closed doors, only open doors.
Well, Toy, thank you so much for coming on, and the information you shared today was invaluable. And like I said, we look forward to having you back on other platform, the Portsmouth Coffee Talk, where we can concentrate on more on Portsmouth, where it's very important, since we don't have a lot of land to bring in new businesses and expand without tearing down old. But retention is very important for a city like Portsmouth. So we look forward to having you back again and on a different platform to talk more about the individual cities. So
Sure.
thanks again. I really appreciate it, and thanks for giving up your time and just answering all the questions, even the one that might got a little personal, but wasn't too personal. But I just felt like it was a part of who you are and needed to
Certainly.
be shared.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
So thanks a lot. And if you have any last words, please say them now. And
Sure. Well, I just thank you for the opportunity. I hope that I shared something today that might help at least one person, and I hope that I did that. And these are great opportunities. I love sharing about the Alliance. I believe in the work that we're doing here, and so I'm happy to share what we're doing here. And I think we're making a difference in the region. And if there's anything that I can do to help you or any of your listeners, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help.
yes, indeed. And go to the website and get all the information of who you want to contact for whatever area. We have several vice presidents that are in charge of certain areas. Yours happen to be retention and expansion, but
Right.
you share a wealth of knowledge in all those areas. We appreciate you, and thanks a lot. And take care.
Thank you. Have a
All
great day.
right. Thanks, everybody, watching. And if you're watching on YouTube now, live or later, make sure you like, subscribe, and we look for your comments, and please share the information. We'll see you next time, and thanks a lot.